In all my years serving in the Galactic Defense Force, I never thought I'd be writing a cautionary report about humans and gravity. It started as a routine observation mission, the kind where we document primitive species for the archive. Earth wasn't even considered a priority system. Just another level 2 civilization barely managing controlled nuclear fission, still burning fossil fuels, and taking their first stumbling steps into orbital operations. I remember lounging in the cloaked observation pod with Lieutenant Tsar, watching a human construction site through our sensors. We were particularly amused by their crude mechanical lifting devices, those yellow machines they call cranes. Tsar kept making jokes about how their understanding of gravitational manipulation was so basic that they still had to physically lift things. Looking back, I should have noticed how the human workers moved with such confidence despite their planet's brutal gravitational pull. "Watch this," Tsar had said, activating our ship's localized gravity manipulator. It was a common prank among junior officers, briefly increasing gravity around primitive species to watch them stumble. Completely harmless, or so we thought. The crane operator's lunchbox began sliding off his control panel, and we expected him to fumble around trying to catch it. What happened next changed my entire understanding of human capabilities. In one fluid motion, the operator snatched the falling box from mid-air while simultaneously adjusting multiple crane controls. The massive steel beam being lifted should have swung dangerously from the sudden movement. Instead, the operator had already compensated for the momentum, making minute adjustments we hadn't even noticed. "Interesting," I muttered, increasing the gravitational field further. The humans below simply adjusted their stance, continuing their work as if nothing had changed. One worker was actually juggling small tools while walking across a narrow beam, his movements becoming more precise as the gravity increased. That's when we realized they weren't just adapting, they were thriving. You see, what we had failed to understand was that humans evolved on a planet with variable gravitational conditions. Their muscles and nervous systems constantly adjust to changes in weight distribution as they move. Every human child learns to handle shifting gravitational forces through activities they call sports and dance. What we saw as primitive physical labor was actually an intricate display of gravitational mastery. Tsar decided to push it further, ramping up the gravity to twice Earth's normal pull. That's when things got really interesting. The workers below started calling out to each other, but not in panic. They were excited. "Hey, feels like leg day at the gym," one shouted. Another responded by doing what they call push-ups, deliberately lifting their entire body weight using just their upper limbs, despite the doubled gravity. The crane operator noticed his machine was straining under the increased load. Instead of abandoning the controls, he started humming something called country music and made a series of rapid adjustments. The steel beam's movement became even more stable than before. He was using the increased gravitational force to dampen unwanted oscillations in the crane's cable system, a technique that took our engineers 3 generations to develop. Our sensors indicated that the humans' heart rates and breathing had increased, but their coordination remained intact. Some were even using the enhanced gravity to perform more efficient work, letting the increased weight drive foundation pins deeper into the soil with less hammer force. They had transformed what we intended as a prank into a practical advantage. That's when the site supervisor walked out of her office. Even from our observation height, we could see her scanning the area with narrowed eyes. She pulled out a device we later learned was a simple pocket accelerometer technology we had dismissed as too basic to be relevant. "I've gained 50 pounds since breakfast," she announced loudly, "or someone's messing with gravity again." Again. That single word sent chills through our observation team. This wasn't the first time humans had encountered gravitational manipulation. We quickly accessed their information networks and found countless references to similar incidents. Instead of reporting them as supernatural or alien phenomena, humans had been methodically documenting these encounters, developing protocols, and even creating training programs for working under variable gravitational conditions. The supervisor pressed some buttons on her communicator, and to our shock, she began rattling off precise measurements of the gravitational fluctuations we were causing. Control, we've got another Class 2 gravity anomaly at Site 847. Pattern matches the Singapore incident from last month. Requesting permission to deploy countermeasures. Czar and I exchanged alarmed looks. Countermeasures? Our shields should have made us completely undetectable to their level of technology. The supervisor smiled up at empty air that happened to be exactly where our cloaked pod was hovering. She couldn't actually see us, could she? Last chance to knock it off and introduce yourselves properly, she called out. Otherwise, I'm going to have to file this as another case of unauthorized gravitational interference. And believe me, the paperwork is a real pain in the neck. She paused, then added with a grin, plus, the response team gets really grumpy about having their lunch break interrupted. I immediately ordered our gravity manipulator to be shut down. As the field returned to normal, I noticed something that our previous observations had missed. The construction site's layout wasn't random. The positions of the equipment, the timing of material movements, even the workers' break schedules, they were all optimized for gravitational incident response. The supervisor was still waiting patiently below, that knowing smile never leaving her face. In the distance, we could hear approaching vehicles, their response team, I presumed. That's when I made the decision that would ultimately lead to this report. I reached for the pod's communications system, ready to break about 15 different first contact protocols. But before I could activate it, the supervisor held up her hand. Tell you what, she called out. Come back tomorrow at 900 hours. Bring donuts, the good kind from Joe's on 5th Street, not that supermarket stuff. We'll give you a proper demonstration of how we handle gravity around here. She turned to walk back to her office, then paused. Oh, and no more pranks. We've got work to do, and messing with Earth's gravity field requires a permit these days. Now I sit here writing this report, watching the sunrise over this remarkable planet. In 3 hours, I have a meeting with a construction crew that has possibly mastered practical gravitational engineering through sheer stubbornness and what they call hands-on experience. My superiors are going to have countless questions about why I violated first contact protocols. But I'll tell them the same thing I'm telling you now. Any species that responds to gravitational warfare pranks by developing construction techniques to exploit them, then implements a permit system to regulate their use, isn't a species we should be underestimating. And they certainly aren't a species we should be pranking. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to figure out what a donut is and why the quality difference between vendors matters so much. I have a feeling this is going to be just the first of many lessons humans have to teach us. I arrived at Joe's Donuts at 8:45, trying to maintain some dignity in my hastily constructed human disguise. The shop owner barely blinked at my slightly blue-tinted skin, which I'd attributed to a rare genetic condition when he asked. Instead, he seemed more concerned with carefully selecting what he called the perfect dozen for my first donut experience. Construction site meeting, huh? He asked, expertly arranging the pastries in a pink box. Let me guess, gravity issues? When I froze mid-nod, he just chuckled. Don't worry about it. Half my morning customers are either dealing with gravity anomalies or temporal distortions. There's a reason we're open 24/7 across all known timelines. I must have looked as confused as I felt because he added, why do you think we're the only donut shop in town with quantum-stabilized jelly filling? Regular jelly goes all weird when spacetime gets wonky. Nothing ruins first contact like pastries that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Before I could process the implications of a human food establishment adapting their recipes for quantum stability, he'd handed me the box and my change. Tell Rita I said hi, and remind her she still owes me for that batch of cosmic background radiation-proof bear claws from last month's incident. Rita, as it turned out, was the construction site supervisor from yesterday. She was waiting for me at the site entrance, along with what appeared to be an unnecessarily large number of people for a simple meeting. Some wore construction gear, others had equipment I didn't recognize, and at least 3 were furiously taking notes on tablets. You brought Joe's. Good choice, Rita said, relieving me of the donut box. We can start with the basics while everyone gets their sugar fix. First question: how's your species with temporal displacement sickness? When I admitted I didn't know what that was, she handed me something that looked like a motion sickness bag. Better safe than sorry. The cleanup from last week's Proxima Centauri delegation was not fun. Turns out their biology really doesn't like it when we demonstrate our gravity-based time dilation techniques. She must have noticed my growing alarm because she quickly added, "Don't worry, we'll start small." Besides, according to our records, your species has a 92% compatibility rating with Earth's standard gravitational variations. Those pranks you pulled yesterday gave us enough data to run a preliminary analysis. As we walked through the site, I noticed things I'd missed during our previous observations. What I'd dismissed as ordinary construction equipment was anything but ordinary. Those crude mechanical cranes? They were actually working in perfect synchronization, creating complex gravitational wave patterns that somehow made the heavy lifting more efficient. You see, Rita explained between bites of a sprinkled donut, humans figured out pretty early that we couldn't match alien tech head-on. We couldn't generate artificial gravity fields or build inertial dampeners. But we could learn to detect them, measure them, and most importantly, use them to our advantage. She pointed to a group of workers who appeared to be playing some sort of game during their break. They were timing their jumps to match subtle gravitational fluctuations, achieving heights that should have been impossible. That's how we train our new hires to sense gravitational anomalies. Turn it into a game, add a competitive element, and humans will master almost anything. But how did you even know to look for these phenomena? I asked, watching in fascination as one worker executed a perfect triple flip by riding what my sensors indicated was a minor gravitational wave. Rita's expression turned serious. Let's just say your crew wasn't the first to think playing with Earth's gravity would be funny. About 15 years ago, some other visitors thought it would be hilarious to randomly increase gravity around our construction sites. They expected chaos. Instead, they kick-started a revolution in human engineering. She led me to what looked like a normal construction trailer, but inside was a monitoring station that would have impressed our military command. Screens displayed gravitational field maps of not just the site, but the entire city. Workers tracked patterns, predicted fluctuations, and coordinated responses with other sites. Within 6 months of the first documented pranks, we had basic detection systems in place, one of the technicians explained. Within a year, we'd figured out how to use the anomalies to improve our construction techniques. After 2 years, we started drafting safety regulations and building codes that took alien gravitational interference into account. Another technician chimed in. The real breakthrough came when someone realized we could use the variations to our advantage. Why fight against randomly changing gravity when you could time your crane operations to sync with it? Sure, it meant completely rewriting our engineering handbooks, but humans are good at adapting. Rita pulled up a series of graphs on the main screen. These are from yesterday. See that spike? That's when your lieutenant tried to double our gravity. But look at our productivity metrics during the same period. The numbers showed a 23% increase in efficiency. You actually became more efficient when we tried to disrupt your work? I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. Of course, Rita smiled. Free energy is free energy, even if it comes from someone trying to prank you. Do you know how much power it normally takes to drive foundation piles into bedrock? But with a well-timed gravity boost. She gestured at the construction site through the window. We completed 3 days' worth of foundation work in 2 hours thanks to your little joke. A young engineer rushed in, practically vibrating with excitement. Commander Rita! We finished analyzing the frequency patterns from yesterday's incident. It matches 6 other cases from the past month. I think we can prove these aren't random pranks anymore, someone's testing us. Rita's expression shifted to something I'd seen on human military commanders in our historical research. "Show me," she said, all traces of casual humor gone. The engineer pulled up a complex diagram showing gravitational wave patterns from multiple incidents. "See these harmonics? They're too precise to be accidental. Someone's systematically probing our response capabilities, testing our limits. They're trying to figure out exactly how much we've learned about gravitational manipulation." I felt a cold sensation in my borrowed human form stomach that had nothing to do with the 3 donuts I'd eaten. Because I knew something they didn't, those other incidents hadn't been our military. Which meant someone else was out there, someone with enough technology to manipulate gravity fields, studying human capabilities just like we were. Rita was already issuing orders, her team moving with practiced efficiency. "Deploy the new sensors we've been testing. Full spectrum analysis on any anomalies, no matter how small. And someone get Joe on the phone, we're going to need more donuts. The quantum stabilized kind." She turned to me with an expression that made me very glad humans were classified as a level 2 civilization. "So, want to tell me what your people know about any other species that might be interested in Earth's gravitational response capabilities? Or should we continue pretending this is just about construction techniques?" I looked at the data on the screens, then at the construction site where workers were casually defying physics while singing something called Sweet Home Alabama, and made a decision that would probably end my military career. "Actually," I said, reaching for another donut, "I think we need to talk about upgrading Earth's classification level. And possibly about forming an alliance. Because if someone's testing your gravitational warfare capabilities, they're probably not doing it out of scientific curiosity." Rita nodded, unsurprised. "Finally! Do you know how long we've been waiting for one of you to officially notice us? Now, let's talk about those permit applications for gravitational manipulation. Our fees are very reasonable, and we offer a discount for first-time applicants." I hadn't expected my day to end in an emergency bunker beneath the construction site, watching humans prepare for what they casually called a Class 4 gravitational incursion. Rita's team had detected multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel on the far side of their moon, all employing the same gravity manipulation signatures they'd been tracking. "How are we looking on the resonance dampeners?" Rita called out, studying a holographic display that showed gravitational wave patterns I hadn't even known humans could detect. The construction site above had transformed into what she called a gravity defense grid, though to my eyes it still looked like an ordinary construction site with a few extra cranes. "North and south arrays are at full capacity," a technician responded, munching on one of Joe's quantum-stabilized donuts. "East side is still calibrating, but we've got enough coverage to handle anything up to 15 times Earth normal gravity." "West side." He paused, frowning at his readouts. "West side is actually showing 126% efficiency. The new apprentices figured out how to use the foundation pile drivers as gravitational wave amplifiers. I was still trying to process that last part when our sensors detected the first attack. The incoming ships, definitely not from our military, had launched what our standard protocols identified as a Level 3 gravitational assault. The kind designed to bring a planet's primitive infrastructure crashing down through localized gravity wells. But instead of panic, I watched in amazement as Rita's team responded with the same casual efficiency they showed while building skyscrapers. "They're starting with the basics," Rita noted, sounding almost disappointed. "Standard crush and crumple pattern. Haven't they noticed we've been collecting their test data for months?" Above us, the construction cranes began moving in perfectly synchronized patterns. Each motion generated counter waves to the incoming gravitational assault. The physics involved should have been far beyond human comprehension, yet they were managing it with equipment that looked like it came from a commercial catalog. "You know what really bugs me?" one of the crane operators said over the comm system, his voice steady despite manipulating forces that could tear apart mountains. "These aliens always assume we'll try to block their gravity weapons. They never expect us to redirect them. I was about to ask what he meant when I saw it. The humans weren't just neutralizing the incoming gravitational attack, they were channeling it through their construction equipment, amplifying it, and feeding it into their foundation systems. The entire site was acting as a massive energy transfer network. "We're at 47% storage capacity," someone announced. "At this rate, we'll have enough power from their attack to run the site's gravity engines for the next 3 months. Rita grinned at my shocked expression. "What, you thought we actually paid for power? Do you know how expensive it is to run a construction company? We've been harvesting alien gravity attacks for our energy needs since the permit system went into effect. The enemy ships must have realized something was wrong because they suddenly switched tactics." The gravitational assault intensified, becoming more focused. They were trying to create a singularity directly above the construction site, a tactic that should have been devastating against a Level 2 civilization. Rita actually laughed. "Finally! We've been waiting months for someone to try a singularity compression. Hey, new guy!" She called to a young worker who had just transferred from another site. "Remember that training simulation we ran last week? This is the real thing. Show us what you learned." I watched in disbelief as the construction team began treating the formation of a black hole like it was a routine engineering challenge. Cranes moved in impossible patterns, their operators humming along to something called classic rock while they casually manipulated forces that could tear planets apart. "Containment field is stable," the new worker reported proudly. "Running it through the conversion grid now. Anyone need extra power for their equipment? We've got plenty to spare." That's when our sensors detected something that made even Rita pause. A massive ship dropping out of FTL directly above Earth's atmosphere. It was easily 10 times the size of the others, and its gravity manipulation systems were like nothing I'd ever seen before. "Well," Rita said, finishing her coffee, "looks like they brought their supervisor. Everyone remember the briefing on Class 5 gravitational events? And somebody call Joe, tell him we're going to need the special batch he's been saving for a real emergency." The massive ship began powering up what our sensors identified as a planetary core destabilizer, a weapon that could literally tear Earth apart from the inside. The kind of weapon that had ended civilizations. The kind of weapon that no Level 2 civilization should have been able to survive. Rita turned to her team, her expression serious but somehow still confident. "All right, people. We've trained for this. Everything we've learned from months of dealing with alien gravity pranks has prepared us for this moment. Let's show them why you don't mess with Earth's construction workers." As the enemy weapon began to fire, I finally understood why humans had transformed their construction sites into gravity defense networks. They hadn't been preparing for an invasion. They'd been preparing for something much more impressive. They'd been preparing to build something using the most powerful gravitational forces in the galaxy. The question was, what exactly were they planning to build with all that power? And why did Rita's smile suggest that our attackers had just made a very, very big mistake by providing exactly the amount of energy her team needed to complete their project? Looking at the determined faces around me, I realized I was about to find out why the permit system had been so specific about proper registration for planetary-scale construction events. The planetary core destabilizer fired, sending a beam of concentrated gravitational force straight toward Earth's heart. In that moment, I finally understood why Rita had insisted on having construction crews positioned at strategic points around the globe. This wasn't just one site defending against an attack, it was a coordinated global response disguised as ordinary construction work. "All sites, commence Project Archimedes," Rita announced into what I had thought was a simple hard hat radio. "Remember, folks, just like we practiced. And yes, you can play your music, just keep it synchronized to the gravitational harmonics like we discussed in training." Suddenly, construction sites worldwide began moving in perfect unison. Cranes, excavators, and equipment I had dismissed as primitive started generating complex gravitational fields that somehow merged with the incoming attack beam. The humans weren't trying to block it, they were redirecting it, using it like some kind of cosmic construction material. "You see," Rita explained, noticing my bewilderment. About 6 months ago, we realized something interesting. Every alien species that attacked Earth used gravity as a weapon. But here's the thing about gravity, it's not just a force, it's a tool. And humans? We're really good at turning weapons into tools. Above us, the enemy ship's core destabilizer beam was being woven into what looked like a massive gravitational lattice extending around the planet. Construction equipment worldwide was moving in patterns that seemed to defy physics, each motion precisely calculated to add another layer to whatever they were building. Did you really think we spent all that time studying alien gravity attacks just to defend against them? Rita asked, grinning as she watched her crews work. Every prank, every test, every small-scale attack, we were gathering data. Learning how different species manipulate gravitational fields. And more importantly, learning how to combine their techniques into something new. That's when I noticed something odd about the gravitational readings. The construction sites weren't just redirecting the attack, they were amplifying it, focusing it in ways that should have been impossible for their level of technology. And they were doing it all with equipment that looked like it came from a hardware store. "Hey Rita," a voice crackled over the radio, "Houston site here. We're ready to initiate the Gravity Forge sequence. Permission to play Stairway to Heaven during the process?" The harmonics matched perfectly with the resonance patterns. "Permission granted," Rita replied, then turned to me with a serious expression. "You might want to hold on to something. This next part tends to get a little intense." The massive alien ship above us suddenly stopped firing its weapon. I could almost imagine their confusion as they realized their attack wasn't having the intended effect. Instead of tearing Earth apart, the gravitational forces were being transformed into something else entirely. "You know what the really funny part is?" Rita said, watching the alien ship's energy readings fluctuate in panic. "We actually tried to file the proper permits for this. Sent applications to every alien government we could detect. Filed paperwork for planetary-scale gravitational engineering. But nobody took us seriously. They all thought we were too primitive to understand what we were asking for." That's when I saw the true purpose of all those construction sites. They weren't building defenses. They were building something far more ambitious. Something that should have been impossible for any civilization without advanced gravity manipulation technology. "Welcome," Rita announced proudly, "to the first test of humanity's planetary gravity drive." The alien ship tried to retreat, but it was too late. The gravitational lattice the construction crews had woven around Earth was now complete, powered by the very weapon that was meant to destroy the planet. And it was starting to move in ways that defied everything I thought I knew about gravitational engineering. "See, we figured out something important," Rita explained as the lattice began to pulse with energy. "Earth's biggest problem isn't that we're stuck in one solar system. It's that we're stuck thinking we need spaceships to explore the galaxy. But why build ships when you can just take your whole planet with you?" As alarms blared on the enemy vessel, I realized with growing amazement that the humans hadn't just developed defenses against gravitational weapons. They'd turned their entire planet into something unprecedented in galactic history, and they'd done it with construction equipment, rock music, and an absolutely ridiculous amount of paperwork. The question now wasn't whether they could survive the attack. The question was, what exactly were they planning to do with a mobile planet? And why did every construction worker on Earth suddenly start humming the same song in perfect harmony with the gravitational frequencies they were generating? Looking at Rita's expression, I had a feeling the answer was going to rewrite every military report about human capabilities. And possibly several laws of physics. As Earth's construction sites channeled the enemy's gravitational weapon into the planetary drive system, something unexpected happened. The quantum-stabilized donuts in our emergency bunker started floating. Not just floating, they were spinning in perfect synchronization with the gravitational harmonics being generated by the construction equipment worldwide. "Huh," Rita said, catching a levitating donut. "That's new. Joe's really outdid himself with this batch." She took a bite, checked her readings, and her eyes widened. Well, that's interesting. Everyone, we've got an unexpected resonance pattern forming. Looks like our friends up there didn't read the fine print about quantum entanglement in their weapon systems. The massive alien ship was now trying desperately to shut down its core destabilizer, but the gravitational lattice the humans had built was keeping the beam locked in place. Every attempt to power down just caused the energy to loop back through Earth's construction-based gravity drive, growing stronger with each cycle. You know what the real irony is? Rita asked, studying the increasingly chaotic readings. We actually warned them about this in our permit applications. Section 47B specifically mentioned the risks of using quantum unstable gravitational weapons against a planet with an active construction industry. But nobody ever reads the fine print. That's when every piece of construction equipment on Earth began humming at exactly the same frequency. The sound harmonized with the gravitational fields in a way that should have been physically impossible. Workers worldwide reported their coffee cups dancing across break room tables, all moving to the same mysterious rhythm. It's beautiful, one of the engineers whispered, watching the patterns form on their monitors. The gravitational fields are aligning perfectly with Earth's natural resonance frequency. It's like the planet itself is singing. The alien ship's weapon had now become fully integrated into Earth's improvised gravity drive, its energy feeding back through thousands of construction sites in an endless loop. But instead of tearing the planet apart, it was doing something entirely unexpected. Something that made Rita laugh out loud when she saw the readings. They actually did it, she said, shaking her head in amazement. The apprentice's crazy theory about harmonic gravitational crystallization was right. We're not just building a planetary drive system anymore. We're turning the entire construction grid into a quantum gravity computer. Above us, the enemy ship was caught in its own gravitational beam, now transformed by human engineering into something far more complex than a simple weapon. Every crane, every excavator, every piece of equipment that humans had supposedly been using just to build structures was revealing its true purpose. They were all nodes in a planet-sized gravity manipulation network. Attention unknown vessel, Rita broadcast on all frequencies, her voice carrying the kind of authority that only comes from filing truly excessive amounts of paperwork. You are in violation of Earth Construction Code 1542, subsection C. Improper use of quantum unstable gravitational weapons in a designated construction zone. Please remain still while we process your citation. The alien ship's response was cut short as Earth's construction grid activated its final form. The gravitational lattice surrounding the planet shifted, not just redirecting the enemy's weapon but transforming it into pure computational power. In an instant, every construction site on Earth became part of the largest gravity-based supercomputer ever created. Now, Rita said, finishing her floating donut, let's show them what happens when you give a species with an advanced construction industry access to unlimited gravitational energy. What happened next defied explanation in any known physical model. The construction grid didn't just neutralize the attack, it solved equations that our most advanced computers would have needed millennia to process. In the space of a few seconds, it calculated every possible configuration of gravitational fields between Earth and the enemy ship. And then, in a move that would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come, Earth's construction workers did something unprecedented. They used their planet-sized gravity computer to fill out and file building permits in every known alien bureaucratic system simultaneously. Permits that, due to various obscure regulations and the way gravity had been warped around Earth, were retroactively approved. Congratulations, Rita transmitted to the increasingly confused alien ship. You are now legally classified as an unauthorized addition to Earth's ongoing planetary renovation project. As site supervisor, I'm going to have to insist you attend our next safety meeting. We have donuts. The enemy commander's response was a string of confused expletives in 17 different languages. But they couldn't argue with the permits, especially since Earth's gravity computer had managed to file them in triplicate across multiple dimensions. As I watched the once mighty alien ship being gently but firmly guided into a designated parking orbit by a series of repurposed construction cranes, I realized something important. We hadn't just underestimated humans' ability to defend against gravitational weapons. We'd underestimated their true superpower, their ability to turn any problem, no matter how deadly, into a paperwork issue. So, Rita said, reading through the freshly generated permits with satisfaction, who's ready to start Phase 2? I hear Jupiter's been looking a bit dull lately, and we've got all these extra gravitational fields to play with. Looking at the construction crews already sketching out plans for what they called basic planetary landscaping, I made a mental note: never, ever mess with a species that responds to alien invasion attempts by filing the appropriate permits and offering their attackers donuts. Especially if those donuts are quantum stabilized. That's how Earth's Construction Corps became the most feared and respected organization in the galaxy. Not through military might or advanced technology, but through a combination of practical engineering, creative problem solving, and an absolutely terrifying mastery of bureaucratic procedures. The alien commander, as it turned out, was actually quite reasonable once they stopped trying to destroy the planet and sat down with a quantum-stabilized maple bar. I just don't understand, they admitted during the mandatory safety meeting. How did you turn our ultimate weapon into a permit filing system? Rita smiled, passing around more donuts to the mix of human construction workers and bewildered alien crew members. Simple. We noticed that the quantum fluctuations in your gravity beam matched the frequency of our standard construction approval processes. After that, it was just a matter of proper paperwork and timing. The meeting was being held in what used to be the alien ship's command center, now temporarily redesignated as Construction Site Break Room B according to the hastily installed but somehow legally binding signage. The former invasion fleet had been officially reclassified as Specialized High-Altitude Construction Equipment, a designation that their own legal systems were finding impossible to argue with. But the gravitational computer, another alien officer protested, the quantum harmonics, the planetary scale engineering. That's all way beyond a Level 2 civilization's capabilities. One of the apprentices looked up from where he was teaching alien engineers how to play something called Crane Simulator on their advanced holographic displays. Not really. We've been practicing this stuff for years. You know those mobile games where you have to stack blocks while dealing with weird physics? Great training for gravitational engineering. I watched in amazement as humans proceeded to completely redefine the relationship between construction work and interstellar warfare. The alien ship's fearsome weapon systems were being methodically integrated into Earth's building permit database. Their quantum targeting computers were reprogrammed to optimize crane scheduling and calculate coffee break rotations. The really clever part, Rita explained to me later, as we watched construction crews installing hard hat required beyond this point signs in the ship's reactor core, wasn't the technology. It was convincing everyone that we were just a simple construction company doing our jobs. Nobody questions a construction site. They see the equipment, hear the noise, and automatically assume nothing interesting is happening. The alien commander had been assigned a bright yellow hard hat and was now attending a mandatory certification course in cross-species safety protocols and proper donut distribution. They seemed surprisingly engaged, especially during the sections about using gravitational anomalies to improve workplace efficiency. You have to understand, they explained to me during their break, we spent decades developing these weapons. Our scientists worked tirelessly to harness the fundamental forces of the universe for warfare. And humans just treated it like a building code violation. Earth's response to the invasion attempt had sparked a revolution in interstellar relations. Construction sites around the world were now hosting delegations from advanced alien civilizations, all eager to learn how humans had transformed basic building equipment into a planetary defense system. The most surprising development came when Rita's team submitted their final report on the incident. Instead of military analysis or technical specifications, It was a simple construction project update form. Under unexpected challenges, they had listed quantum gravity weapon right between rain delay and supply chain issues. But the real changes were just beginning. Once word spread that Earth had successfully defended itself using nothing but construction equipment and properly filed permits, other civilizations started approaching us differently. Instead of invasion fleets, they sent engineering consultants. Instead of threats, they submitted building permit applications. It makes sense when you think about it, Rita said during the first Interstellar Construction Safety Congress, held, appropriately, at a renovated alien battle station. Every species in the galaxy knows how to blow things up. But building things? That's a universal language. Joe's Donut Shop became an unofficial diplomatic hub, with alien diplomats and construction workers alike lining up for his quantum-stabilized pastries. He had to hire extra staff just to handle the paperwork for multi-dimensional baking permits. The apprentice who had figured out how to use pile drivers as gravitational wave amplifiers was now teaching a graduate course in applied construction physics at a prestigious alien university. His first lecture, titled Why Earth Equipment Has Warning Labels, a guide for non-human species, had become required viewing across the galaxy. As for me, I submitted my final military report with a single recommendation: upgrade Earth's classification immediately. Not because of their technology or their defenses, but because they had accomplished something far more impressive. They had made bureaucracy into a superpower. Today, years after the Great Construction Incident as it's now known, things have changed dramatically. Earth's construction sites are recognized as neutral zones in any interstellar conflict. The sight of a yellow hard hat is enough to make even the most aggressive species think twice about causing trouble. Rita still runs her site, though it's grown considerably since that first encounter. The original construction crew has expanded to include members from dozens of species, all learning the human way of combining practical engineering with impenetrable paperwork. The alien ship that started it all? It's now permanently parked in Earth orbit, converted into what they call a practical training facility. Every day, construction workers from across the galaxy come to learn how humans turned gravitational warfare into a lesson about workplace safety. The funny thing is, Rita told me during my last visit, watching a group of alien apprentices learn how to file quantum-compliant building permits, we really were just trying to build things. All that gravity manipulation and universal harmonics stuff? That was just us trying to figure out more efficient ways to get the job done. Joe's quantum-stabilized donuts have become a recognized form of interstellar currency. There are rumors that some advanced civilizations have based their entire economic systems on the exchange rate of his apple fritters. The construction permit system that saved Earth has been adopted as the standard format for interstellar building codes. Some say it's because of its efficiency. Others suggest that no one wants to deal with the paperwork required to change it. But perhaps the most significant change is in how the galaxy views humans. We're no longer seen as a primitive species barely managing nuclear fission. Instead, we're known as the civilization that turned the most powerful weapons in the universe into construction tools, all while maintaining proper safety protocols and never missing a coffee break. As I finish this report, I can see Rita's team starting work on their latest project, something they're calling basic planetary landscaping. They're using repurposed gravity weapons to adjust Jupiter's orbit, just a tiny bit, to improve its feng shui. The permit application for this project is reportedly longer than most species' entire legal codes. It includes 17 different forms just for the coffee and donut supply logistics. And somehow, that makes perfect sense. Because if there's one thing the galaxy has learned, it's that you don't mess with a species that responds to gravitational warfare by filing the appropriate paperwork. Especially if they offer you a quantum-stabilized donut while they're doing it. And as for that inspection I was originally sent to conduct? Well, let's just say Earth passed. With flying colors. And proper permits, of course. End report. Note, this document has been filed in triplicate across 7 dimensions and translated into every known alien language. Copies have been quantum stabilized by Joe's Donut Shop to ensure temporal consistency. Warning labels have been properly attached in accordance with all relevant safety regulations. P.S. If anyone needs me, I'll be at the construction site. Rita mentioned something about using a black hole as a rotating restaurant, and I want to see the permit application for that one.